From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Hi, it's Charlie Matos, and in this episode, we sit down with the great singer-songwriter Dean Dillon. Dean, part of the 2020 class of inductees into the Country Music Hall of Fame. He will be inducted with Hank Williams Jr. and Marty Stewart. We Zoomed with Dean Dillon from his home in Colorado on August the 17th of 2020. Enjoy our conversation with one of the newest members of the Hall of Fame, Dean Dillon.
Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM.
The 2020 class of the Country Music Hall of Fame, Veteran Era category, Hank Williams Jr., Modern Era, Marty Stewart, Songwriter, that rotating category, to Dean Dillon. But he wasn't always a songwriter, ladies and gentlemen. He was once the sexiest man that country music had ever seen. If you didn't, what? Look up the video. Look up the video. Hot, country, single, looking for a weekend full of fun. She's hot, country, single. Got one thing on her mind. Well, good time, rain or shine. She's hot, country, single. She's hot, she's country, and she's single. Dean Dillon, artist on Coffee, Country, and Cody. Hey, bud.
Hey, man, you know, I married one of those, hot country and single. I sure did. Her name's Susie, and she's, gosh, what a blessing she's been. Just a wonderful woman.
Boy, that recording era, that portion of your career, what time period was that, Dean?
80s, 79, well, 77 through, I don't know, 82, somewhere in there. It was after, you know, I gave it up after I'd had about my third number one on George Strait, and I thought, man, you know, it's a lot easier to sit at home or somewhere and write a song than it is to be out on the road.
But obviously you must have come to town originally to be an artist. That's where it was at for you.
Well, both. You know, I started writing really young. I got my first guitar when I was 7 years old, and it wasn't long after that I started writing. And, you know, started singing and performing. And, yeah, I did come to Nashville with artists in mind, but I also carried a few songs with me when I came. So I was happy to have my stab at both of them.
You say you came to Nashville. Share with people your early years. Where is Lake City, Tennessee, for people who don't know?
Well, it's been the name of the town, believe it, has gone through three names. In the 40s, it was called Cold Creek. They had a flood there and renamed it Lake City. And then about 6 years ago, there was a guy that came to town that was going to build a humongous entertainment park there, and unfortunately he passed away after 6 months after they'd renamed the town Rocky Top. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's 30 miles north of Knoxville, Tennessee. Go Big Orange. And you know, I love my Vols, and just a wonderful place to grow up, you know, in the mountains in East Tennessee. I couldn't ask for more.
So great. Dean, congratulations. This is Megan Alexander, new to the show. So nice to meet you, sir. I'm looking at all these hits. Oh, my gosh. The Chair, Nobody in His Right Mind Would Have Left Her, It Ain't Cool to Be Crazy About You, Oceanfront Property. I got to ask you, in your vast collection of hits, was there one that surprised you? When you wrote it, you thought, I don't know if this will ever see the light of day, or was there a song that surprised you that became successful? So many of them happen.
Yeah, a lot of them. If you want to know the truth. I mean, Harlan Howard's told me one time, you know, the odds of out of 100 songs, if you get a song cut, it's about 3 or 4. Wow. So, you know, there were a few that I was fairly certain that were pretty darn good songs. You know, songs like The Chair, Miami, Marina Del Rey. I'll tell you one song I did not think was a hit at all was Oceanfront Property.
Wow.
I did not like that. I didn't like that song when we wrote it. It's not one of my favorites today. And the reason for that is I didn't want to be known as a funny songwriter. I didn't. It was just, and I thought, man, I don't want to put something out there like that, even if I wrote it, and because I took life a whole heck of a lot more serious than that. But lo and behold, the song comes out, goes to number one the first week it's out, sells 1 million records, does everything that no other song's ever done in country music at that point. So that ought to tell you what I know about if it's a hit or not.
I love your
Dean
honesty.
Dillon, if you just joined us on Coffee, Country, and Cody, newest member of the Country Music Hall of Fame, one of three, Hank Williams Jr., Marty Stewart, and Dean Dillon. Marty Stewart said if we took you to the stockyards, the three of you wouldn't bring $30. That's about $10 a head. No?
We wouldn't. We wouldn't. I want to say something, too, about Hank Jr. I ran with Hank a little bit back in the late 70s, early 80s. Great friend. And I just want to tell him my thoughts and prayers are with him, over losing his daughter. I can't imagine. But I do hope that this brings a little ray of sunshine, this award, the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's the top of the mountain, Bo Cephas, and enjoy as much of it as you can. And I love you, and our thoughts and prayers are with you.
What about your background with Marty Stewart, your friendship through the years? How well do you know each other?
You know what, Marty and I go, gosh, I've known Marty since, I don't know, mid-70s, 80s. I've written with him a few times. Great, great person. Just a great person. A torchbearer for country music, if there ever was one. Warehouse is full of country music memorabilia. A lot of people don't know that, but he, over the years, he's been bestowed with some of the biggest archives in the country music world. But again, a great songwriter, a great singer. I love his band, best ever was. And just a great guy to hang around with. A lot of fun, Whereas I'm a downer, but he's a great guy to hang with.
So 1981 for Unwound, that was the first of what would be 68 George Strait cuts that were written or co-written by Dean Dillon. Did I have my math right?
Well, pretty close. I actually wrote that in 79.
Okay.
And here's the way that goes, and a lot of people don't know this. We wrote the song in 79. I think he cut it in 80, and it wasn't put out till 81. And a lot of people ask me, well, the song never came out till 81. I'm going, yeah, but we wrote it in 79. So back in those days, and even today still, it's not anything to write a song and then, a couple years later, the thing happens. So,
Well, what was happening at the same time as the song was that the artist was happening, too, in this particular case.
Right, yeah. And there's a lot goes into thought that school of thought when to put something out, and that takes time sometimes. But I'll say this. I'm really glad it came out, and I'm really glad he had the success he did with it,
How well did the two of you know each other when he gave you that first cut with Unwound?
We did not. We never met until it could have been Marina Del Rey before we met. I think it was like three singles in, and then Irv Woolsey, his manager, called me one day and said, "Hey, you want to meet George? He's at Maud's Courtyard." And I said, "Well, sure." And I walk in there, and this is back when you could smoke in a restaurant, and I'm puffing on Marlboros, and I sit down at this table with this guy, and I look at him smoking, and he goes, "Man, you mind putting that out? That smoke really bothers me." And I blew a big old ring. I said, "You mean this?" And he just looked at me, and I said, "All right, man, no problem." Put it out. And I think Irv was about to freak out, And but we settled into good laughter, and it was a great meeting. He's such a great guy. It's been so – there's been just great loyalty between the two of us all these years. Every time he went into the studio to cut an album, I was usually at his office on that Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning playing them songs, and we've done that for years.
Well, and how cool now that it really has come full circle that you guys not only co-write, but Bubba is on the co-writing list as well.
Hey, man, you know what? When he first called me, it's been a while now, 10 years ago, I guess, 8 years ago, and said, hey, would you be interested in coming down and writing with me and Bubba? I knew I had a pretty good idea about what kind of writer George would be, because he's, not just with my songs, but all the other songs on the albums too. He's such a great song picker, and when I got down there, we ride at the ranch a lot of times. When I got down there, I had no idea about Bubba, but I'm going to tell you what, he lit it up the first day. He just did. He was game on and still game on.
And everybody thinks of you related to George Strait, obviously, and for good reason, but with 68 cuts. Who else have you written for that people may not know, Dean, because they associate you and George so closely?
Well, it surprises a lot of people that I've written a lot with Kenny Chesney, a lot of beach albums. And the reason for that being was I lived on a boat with Hank Cochran in the Bahamas forever. And then I spent a lot of time down at St. Croix and St. John back in my younger years. I hid out down there for 1 year. And I remember Hank and I were somewhere on the boat one time, and George had called and said, hey, man, I'm cutting a new album. Where are you guys at? And when you coming back? I said, I ain't telling you where I'm at, and I ain't coming back.
What a life. What a life.
That sounds like a song title. You need to write that before the day's over.
and Hank said, well, wait a minute now. We need some money. And I said, all right, we'll go back and demo this stuff. But, yeah, I spent a lot of time down there. And Kenny and I go way back to his early Capitol record days. And he's from Luttrell, Tennessee, which is not far from me at all. And but we first met at Acuff Rose. They signed him as a writer. He got his start on Capitol, I think. And then I got to tell you a funny story, guys and girls. He had been wanting to write with me for a couple of years, and I didn't know it. And Troy Tomlinson, who was head of the writers there at Acuff Rose, told him, said, man, I just don't think you're ready for that. And so a couple years go by, and Troy calls me and says, hey, man, would you write with Kenny Chesney? And I'm like, are you kidding me? He's an East Tennessee guy. That's blood. Sure, I will. So the first day, I'm on the second floor of the Acuff Rose building, staring out the window with my back turned to the door when he pops in. And, man, he is high as a kite on writing. And I had my back to him, and I stretched out my arms, took a big old deep breath, and I said, Kenny, give me a minute to get down to your level.
That's great.
And he's got the biggest, what do you mean, look on his face. And then I broke out in laughter, and that was it. That solidified our relationship, man. We've just been, I've flown with him several times now to St. John and hung out on the beach with him. Scotty Emmerich, another great songwriter, and wrote a bunch of, songs with him. What a great guy, too, a lot of times these artists, I don't know, they can have not be nice sometimes, but it just seems I've been blessed my whole life with people who were just, open arms with me. And I think that's been a huge reason for my success. That and the ability to write with songwriters who are the best in the universe, in my humble opinion. This Hall of Fame thing, guys, is definitely not all about me. By no means. I've just had some of the, been so blessed to write with such many great writers. Matraca Berg right off the top of my hat, Lee Miller, Casey Beathard. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. and just feel real blessed by it all, real humbled by it, truly.
Dean Dillon, the first week I was in town, Dean Dillon, I got invited by Tom Atkinson to go to a Southern Living event that was a songwriter's guitar pull. Troy Tomlinson was hosting, Dean Dillon and Don Sampson. I certainly remember that night. Thank you so much for joining us on Coffee, Country, and Cody, and congratulations on being the newest member of the Country Music Hall of Fame in the songwriter category with your old buddy Hank Cochran, along with Hank Williams Jr. and Marty Stewart this year. Dean, thank you, buddy. God bless you.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, guys. And thank WSM. You all have a beautiful, beautiful COVID-free day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our program director at WSM Radio is J. Patrick Tittle. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director is Amanda Cannon. And I'm Charlie Matos. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help new people find the show.